Today we're going to design our second part. That second part is going to look like this. We're going to be using a lot of the same features that we used yesterday. Extrude boss, extrude cut. You may also notice that we have some curved parts right here. These are called fillets. We're going to add some fillets in this. So what makes this a little more difficult is that we have essentially a floating block right here. So it's not all on the same plane. We're not just cutting holes through it completely. You notice that this hole cut right here is on a different plane. So what I chose to do first, and this is something I'm going to have you do an assignment here in the near future, is I took this piece, and this was created using some pretty basic measurements. Let's see if I can get the focus here. Quite a bit of a glare. That's not great, but you get the idea of what I did here. So I set this block on top, and I traced around it, and then I measured. So all of these dimensions in here are either a full inch or a half inch, just to make this design a little bit easier to create. So as I have this here, let me see if I can get the glare off of it so you guys can see it a little better. There we go, that's better. So I have this traced here. Now this is from the top view, which is what we're going to start with. We're going to be doing the main, we'll call it the base, the large portion of the rectangle, the largest part, and then we're just going to start cutting some holes out of it. Okay, also, what I had to do is I had to flip this. So that way we can look from the top down, and I have these measured out as well. Okay, what you can't see, there it is right there. I put a little dashed block. It's a 1 inch by 1 inch block. That's going to be this little floating block right here. So these are the dimensions that I'm going to be working with when we do the tutorial today. But just to give you an idea how I started, I took a note card, I traced it, I measured it, and I knew that this design was created using some precise measurements, meaning 1 inch, 2 inch, half inches, and so on. So I measured it knowing that that was roughly going to be the numbers that were used if I got close. So now we're going to jump into Solidworks, and we're actually going to create this, do some rotating. So once again, just like yesterday, if you are struggling to follow along with the steps, rewind it, go watch it. Do not just play the video straight through. That's not very helpful. So I suspect that this video is probably going to be a little bit longer than yesterday. Definitely doable to get done in class today, as long as you're pausing and not getting too far behind the video. All right, so here we go. We're working on part 2 today. So remember, we're going to go in to do part, just so you're aware the difference between these. So these are drawings, obviously, as you can see. Those are two-dimensional. Assembly are multiple pieces that are assembled together that actually function and move, but we're still working on designing individual parts. So we're going to click on Part. And if you have this menu that's popping up, as long as it's not pinned using this little pin here, when you click on the drawing here, it will go away. So the very first part that we are going to design from the top. So let's go back into, you see it says trimetric here. Let's click on the green arrow. So we're looking down from the top. And we're going to start by simply sketching a rectangle. It's going to say choose which plane. Yep, top plane. Great. So as I draw this, this is going to be 2 inches by 4 inches. So if we get exactly close, we don't have to do any of the smart dimension. But let's just say I draw this like this. This is a reminder from the last lesson. Smart dimension is actually pretty simple to use. So this is going to be 2 inches. I saw smart dimension selected, drag down, click, 4 inches. Great. So there is my base.
Now from my drawing, I know that this is a 2 inches in height. Okay, so I'm going to go over to Features. I'm going to do an extruded boss, and I'm going to make this 2 inches. Now just a reminder, blind, what that means is you can specify how deep you want things to go. I'll talk about this here shortly when we start cutting some holes and how that makes sense. Alright, so we have our hole cut. Okay, I can either right click and click OK here. I can actually click the green check box over here, or I can click this green box over here. All of them will do what we need to do. Great, so there is my base rectangular prism. So remember, if we get this all mixed around and we don't know where we're going, simply click on the green arrow and we're back. Alright, so the next step that we want to do is we want to cut out a 2-inch, 1-inch rectangle up here at the top. So let's go into Sketch. I'm going to pick a rectangle. It's going to say, hey, what plane do you want to use? And we say we're going to use this plane. Solidworks says OK. Now what you can do to make life a little bit easier too is if you have that plane selected, might be hard to see, but if I'm pointing right in the corner, I get a little goldish yellow dot, a mark point. I can drag this out and pay no attention to those red arrows. Those are not the center because I didn't draw it from the center, but once again, let's go from there to there. Smart dimension, okay, this is going to be 2. Great. And smart dimension still selected. This is going to be 1. Great. So there we go. Now that I have this selected, I can hit check, or I can right click and hit select. That way it takes me off of the smart dimension tool. And I'm going to cut this. I'm going to cut this whole chunk out here. So we have it selected, Features, Extruded Cut. Now this is what I mentioned to you earlier, how we can choose, let me rotate this so we can see. There we go. We can choose blind, which in this case makes sense because we know it's 2 inches. But we also have some other choices here. We can cut through all. We can go up to next, up to vertex. So these are all things we're going to be working on or using in future projects. Essentially going through all would make sense here. And what happens here is that if you have a very long project and you want to cut a hole straight through it and you don't exactly know how long it needs to be, you can go through all. Okay, we're just going to simply leave this as 2 inches. That cut looks good. Checkbox, and off we go. So now let's go back to the top. We are there. And from the top-down view, the only part that I really have next is I want to cut a triangle over here. And I'm going to show you a little bit of a tip on how to get that to be centered in this area. So in order to do a triangle, we're actually going to use a line, a regular line. Now we can use center lines in order to kind of use mark points. So center lines are more reference points. They don't actually exist in the drawing. But we're going to click line. It's going to once again say, hey, which plane you want? We say right here. SolidWorks says OK. We're just going to start drawing this here. And it doesn't have to be perfect because, again, we can use Smart Dimension. So I'm going to just click. I'm not going to hold. One click. Drag down. What would make life a lot easier, if you see where it goes 90 degrees, okay, it's a little forgiving there, a little snapping. Okay, 90 degrees, we're going to go there. Let's come over, and let's stay on 90 degrees also here. Great, and let's go up. Now once we connect this top point here, right there, our line tool, we can hit check, and then we have our, whoops, I didn't click it. Check, and then we have our drawing here. Let's once again use Smart Dimension. Drag this down. 1.5, 1.5. Check. Smart Dimension still selected, so let's drag this out. And we'll do 1.5. check. Okay. Now, I'm going to teach you a little bit of a tip here. Let's get out of Smart Dimension. And I'm going to take the rectangular tool. I'm going to zoom in here. And what I'm going to do, you see how when I get close to lines, how they become orange. All right, so I'm going to start here and I'm going to draw this, and it's going to snap. There it goes. So there it snaps. So now I have this piece here that I'm essentially going to use as a spacer. Let's hit check. Let's go Smart Dimension again. Now I know from my drawing that these are roughly a 1/4 inch from the edges in order to make it perfectly centered. So if I use Smart Dimension here and I drag this thing down and I go 0.25, watch what happens here. Okay? So it moved along with this block because I connected them together. It realized that this was supposed to adjust the triangle and according to this, this line here on the right. Let's do the same thing down here. So I'm going to get out of Smart Tool. Let's go back to our rectangular tool. Go here to here. Great. Let's use Smart Dimension. In this case, since we're centering it this direction and it's 0.25, this is the line I want to drag out. 0.25. Check. Bingo. Now, what I also want to do, we're not doing cuts with these, so I guess essentially we could leave these, and that's okay. But we don't need them anymore because they're just like little spacers. So if I have it on my regular select tool with the arrow, I click on this square here, rectangle I suppose, we can right click and delete it. It's going to say, hey, hang on a second. This is associated with 2 other shapes. Do you want to use it anyway or delete it anyway? And I'm going to say, yep, sure do. Do the same thing up here. Click on this. Let's right click, delete. Whoa, hang on. Yep, we do. So now I have my triangle there, perfectly centered. Next thing we need to do is we need to cut this, extruded cut. So we have this selected, features, extruded cut, blind 2 inches. Since this is 2 inches, great. Once again, we could go through all that also works, but this takes care of that. So here's what we have so far. Once again, if you're struggling a little bit, pause the video, watch it again. Okay, so here's our shape. The next thing we're going to work on is going to be, I'm going to hold down my scroll button, my little rolly ball on my mouse, and we're going to work on making these, which are called fillets. That is up here at the top. So if I click on fillet, there, I then need to point to what line or what area I want to fillet. Okay, so I'm going to click on this line right here. Now what is a little tricky, you might think that we can type up here. Not true. We're going to go over here. And we're going to make this 0.2. We're going to go up just a little bit. 0.2, checkbox. Check that out. Okay, fillet. Let's go and do this one. Let's also make this one 0.2. Oh, looks like it already is. Let's see here. Let's try this again. 0.2. Check. There we go. So now we have our little bit of our curve here. We have 2 more items that we need to add to this. We need to put a cutout semicircle here, and we need to extrude a cube up here. Now according to my dimensions, this is a 1 inch by 1 inch cube that's raised 1/2 inch. Let's do that one next. Alright, so let's just simply rotate this. Now if you go back to the home, if you want to just rotate this down, that's okay too, because when we select this plane in order to draw that, that extruded little cube on it, it's going to ask us what plane. So let's go to Sketch, We're going to click on this, and once again it says, hey, 1 second, what plane do you want to use? And we're going to say we're going to draw this thing right here. Make sure you have the proper one selected, otherwise it's going to be confused drawing off the bottom. So here we go. Let's click on that. Oop, it flipped us around. That's okay. So in my drawing, that cube is going to be right here, and that semicircle, now that it's rotated around, is going to be here. So if I were to zoom in, I get a little point here. Let's drag this up. Let's get as close as we can to 1 and 1. See how close I can get. There it is. That way I don't have to use Smart Dimension to resize it. Rectangle. Done. We can either click checkbox here, or we can right click, hit select, and bingo. So now we have that little square here. Since we are growing this upward, we're going to once again use extruded boss. It's saying 2 inches, and we're going to say no, not 2 inches this time. We're going to go 0.5. Check. Great. Hit it again. And now we have this part right here. Zoom out. Last piece we need. We're going to cut a semicircle here. And we're going to make that perfectly centered on this line right here. Okay, so let's go into Sketch. Let's draw a circle. And it once again says, wait a second, what plane? We say we're cutting through this one. And on this one, if we get close, there it is, to the center point, you see it pops up. I don't know if you can see on the video. Little yellow, gold, little marker. We're going to click on this, and we're going to make a 1-inch circle. Now, 1-inch circle has a 1/2-inch radius. So 1/2-inch radius, because radius is half of a circle. There we go. Check. And here we go. Let's cut this thing. Once again, how deep do we want to go? Let's look at this. Let me zoom out. Not far enough. We can drag this out if we want to. That's fine too. Okay? Or we just know that this is 1 inch, so we can type it in here. Or, once again, we can say let's cut through all. All of those options work. So now let's get back to our top view here. Great. We are done. Take a screenshot of this using your snipping tool. Upload it for today's exit ticket.